Welcome to devMode.fm, a podcast dedicated to the tools, techniques, and technologies used in modern web development. I'm Andrew Welch from NY Studio 107.
I'm Marian Newlevant here in Portland, Oregon.
And I'm Patrick Harrington from Mildly Geeky in Boston.
And today we have on Simon, I'm going to butcher your last name even though I've known you for years, Vrachliotis from Thinkmill. How you doing, Simon?
Pretty good, thank you. And you nailed it.
No.
That was pretty good.
Come on. There's no way. Matt pronounces it like like totally different than that. Say your last name. You say it.
Vrachliotis or Vrachliotis, you can choose. And you picked the second, and that was pretty good.
Oh, okay, cool. And we had Simon doing our Rage Against the Machine bomb track intro on his ukulele, which is pretty cool. So, Simon, if you were wandering around nomadically looking for a good internet connection, recording a podcast in the back of your car, randomly positioned somewhere outside of Sydney, and someone asked you, what was it like to transition from a primary school teacher to a React web dev trainer? What would you say?
Ooh, I'd say that's a pretty long story, but sounds like you spied on me because this is exactly what my morning started looking like.
Okay, I want you to describe this. So first of all, everyone, Simon is in Australia and he has this internet connection that Simon at work. What hours does it not work for you?
Any hour where other people would use the internet. So mostly between 8 in the morning and 9 p.m.
If you're awake, when you would actually want to use it, right?
Yeah, if there's sunlight outside or some sort of...
Telstra or whatever is the internet provider, right?
I'm not with Telstra. Telstra is the biggest provider in Australia. I'm with a company that should not be named.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. But in any event, it's like 5 in the morning. You had to get up at 4:30 in the morning to do this recording. And in order to, this is how bad your internet is, apparently. In order to try and get something that actually works, you actually drove around next to a cell tower. Is that right?
Correct. I literally drove about 5 minutes from my house on a plateau high on the hill, and there's one of these towers for reception, which optimizes the chances. But I have really good, I posted a tweet just before, and it's like 80 down, 40 up, which is huge for Australia.
I just think that's hilarious that you're so if anyone can picture it. So Simon is in the back of his car.
No, I'm at the steering wheel. Well,
you're at the steering wheel.
I'm at the driver's seat yet.
Okay, so you're in the driver's seat. You got a laptop balanced on the steering wheel, or is it in the seat next to you, or what's going on?
Between the steering wheel and myself.
Okay, so you got it propped up there.
So what kind of car is it?
It's a VW Polo, which is quite small.
Yes.
Yeah. So if anyone is around Sydney and wants to harass, if they see a VW Polo next to a cell tower somewhere, you can come up and bang on the window.
There's absolutely no one around me, so you'd find me.
But anyway, so you've got the laptop position there, and then you've got a microphone, and you said you're running on battery, right? So we only have a certain amount of time to do this podcast. Is that right?
7 minutes left, I'd say.
Oh my God, we better get into it quick.
No, I have 90% battery, and I have a full power bank that can recharge it to about 100% or just under. So we should be good.
Okay. You're living, this is impressive. But in any event, I have known you for, God, how long have I known you? 3 years, 4 years, something like that?
Yeah, I'd say about 4 years now.
Yeah, something like that. And the way I knew you is, initially you came in then it was a craft Slack and you were asking questions about you're getting a craft site set up and I helped you a little bit. And then you were one of the few people who was nice enough to be like, oh, this guy is really helping me. Maybe I should pay him, right? And you managed to get your company, which at the time was Society One, to kind of onboard me to help with consulting thing. But I want to rewind it before all of that. So apparently the tech world was not your first career. What was your first career?
So I started as a primary school teacher where I was teaching sports and geography.
Hold on. So you were a gym teacher. So you were playing kickball and throwing balls at kids and hitting them in the face and that kind of thing?
All that kind of stuff, but with the Swiss flavor, which involves skiing and lots of different activities that are kind of Swiss sports, mostly soccer and basketball, volleyball.
Oh, okay. So you were a primary teacher in Switzerland?
Yes. So I'm originally from Switzerland, which is why I go by the nickname of SimonSwiss. And I went to university, 7 years of university to get a teaching degree of sports and geography. Wow. And I ended up starting working for a private school in Switzerland. Okay. And the interesting part is because I was teaching sports, we would do a lot of tournaments. Sometimes even because it was a private school, we did some international tournaments. And parents that gave trust to me to take their kids on a trip wanted some updates on first of all, the sports, like how did the tournament go and how's the trip going and stuff. My way to update them was very, very poor. It was just like a little PDF. I had a Word document with the results and then export to PDF and email to the parents. sometimes the next day. And
so you have soccer moms in Switzerland too? Is that what you're telling me?
Sort of.
Yeah, it sounds like these are soccer moms that wanted updates on their kids, right?
Yep, they wanted updates really, really quick. And eventually I thought maybe there's a thing on the web that allows me to publish results, which there was. And long story short, I figured out that would be a good idea to try to build a little website for the tournament results. And I know Patrick's here and might like it. I discovered this CMS called Drupal. And that was my gateway entry into web development. I like the background side. Ugh.
Are we looking at 6, 7, 8?
That was Drupal version 6 at the time.
Oh, that's even worse. Yeah, that was awful.
So that was your gateway drug, huh? So it was big.
You didn't run screaming.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to me. So this was kind of like purpose driven, right? And it kind of reminds me of, we talked with Verity about her background, and she was just like, well, it can't be that hard. How hard could it be? I'm just going to do it, right? And you kind of had the same thing. You're just like, I'm just going to go build this thing.
Completely reverse engineering my way. So essentially at the start, I literally found a Drupal site that had a theme that kind of looked like I wanted. And I found the reason I went to Drupal is there was a module called sports leagues. And it would allow you to set up team names and then round robin tournaments and then just give you some tables, and you would just start a match. And then when the game finishes, you put the score and it auto updates the standings tables and the tournaments. And it would send an email to the people who subscribe, which would be the parents. And while the site looked the way it looked, and I had no idea to really control any of that, the parents were completely blown away how amazing. That was the year I think the iPhone came out, or maybe a couple of years after, 2009 or 10, I don't know. And I was able to, from my phone, enter the results from the court side, and the parents would see the result immediately and message back like, oh, thank you so much. This is amazing.
That's really cool. So how did you end up going to Australia from Switzerland? Like, what happened?
That's a very interesting point. That's a long story. I'll try to keep it short, but to stay on topic of this Drupal thing, eventually I wanted to change how the site looked. And so I discovered this Firebug thing in Firefox, which allows you to look at the CSS and change the color and font size and realize, wow, I can change these things and I can actually make it look like I want. And quite soon, I realized sometimes you can't just change the CSS. The template markup needs to change. So I got into HTML, and because of Drupal, I got into some PHP, like simple things like loops and stuff like this. And I kind of reverse engineered my way to a point where I started doing other websites for other people on the side, because I was like, hey, I have that skill now that I should use. And also what happened is the school I was working at showed other private schools, because these tournaments are against other schools, and they were like, hey, this is what we have. Like, we just have that website and the parents can see the results. And all of a sudden I got propelled to this group of private schools webmaster, because everyone wanted the same website and the same functionality.
Right.
And I ended up building a website which was that version, but for all the schools, and that would handle all the tournaments for all the different schools during the different seasons and stuff like that.
So you became a web developer.
I kind of literally volunteered my way into that progressively by just drag and drop, like you would do in WordPress or Drupal, which maybe you've seen that thread from Chris Coyer talking about people assembling websites rather than building them, because not really understanding the underlying technologies, and progressively learn my way very deep into the stack up to this point. But
yeah, and that was my comment actually. I was just like, yeah, that type of thing is more web assembly than not the technology, Patrick. Don't get all worked up.
Yeah,
but it is more assembly than development. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but that's how a lot of people get started.
So I haven't answered your question, but I will now.
All right.
While I was getting trained at university to be a sports teacher, I did 1 year exchange program, as you can do with universities, and I went to a Sydney university called UTS. So I did 1 full year of my university program in Sydney.
And why? What motivated you to do that? Because Sydney is pretty far away. Did you just kind of always want to go to Australia, or?
I did and I did not, because I actually applied for University of British Columbia in Vancouver. Very attracted to the idea of snowboarding in Whistler and stuff like this.
Okay.
And I got accepted.
Hold on. So this was an extended vacation for you, and you were just picking destinations that had something you wanted to do, snowboarding or surfing.
That's kind of what university is like, no?
All right, fair enough.
Now, well, I got accepted to this British Columbia University. I got so excited. And then they reached out to me, say, I am so sorry. The person that does the opposite and comes to Lausanne in Switzerland, which was my uni, has pulled out and we cannot send you there. And I was like, so miserable. And they say, but there is an opening in Sydney. It's kind of different, but if you want to go surfing instead of snowboarding. And I suddenly...
Well, Simon, if you think about it, it's all just a board on some form of water. You know, one is frozen, the other isn't. What's the difference?
Exactly. It's all the same sort of activity.
Yeah.
But again, long story short, and it's not that short anymore, but I went to Sydney. I studied sports and tourism and marketing, and I discovered a woman, which is now my wife and mother of 2 children, Heather, which is Australian. And I came back to Switzerland for a few years, and now in this new dynamic of having a partner that comes from the other side of the world. So she came to Switzerland as well, but it was clear in my head that we might, as a family, want to go back and forth. And the appeal of being able to work from my laptop and technically carry my job over when I moved to the other side of the world got stronger and stronger. So from that webmaster, I was still a sports teacher, maybe 80-90% of my week, and then doing 10% webmaster duties. And the next year, so I think it was 2010 or 11, I said to my boss, hey, I want to try teach 50% and pursue this web development thing the other 50% of the week, which I did for 1 year. And pretty much immediately I was like, hold on, I'm making more money and I have more fun and I can completely work from wherever I want on this 50% where I do web dev. And so in 2013, my wife and I, and we had 1 child about 11 months back then, we decided to go back to Australia. And I had put a bit of money on the side and I had a buffer of about 6 months to just give it a go and go full-time web development. And if it takes off, sweet. And if it doesn't, I can go back to teaching and do
what could go wrong?
Degree. Exactly.
What could go wrong, right? Yeah, you know? And, you know, it's interesting you use the terminology discovered a girl. When I talked to Heather when I was down in Australia, she said something about a restraining order. So like the kind of was a little bit different in terms of your interpretations of things. You were kind of stalking her or something like that, right?
We met somehow.
Okay. All right. We'll just leave it there. That's fine. That's fine. And just for everybody else who may be living elsewhere in the world, you said you were a primary school teacher. What age range kids is that?
So it's pretty much from when they finish daycare and start school, which is called differently in different places of the world, but about 4 years old, the youngest. I think I had once a 3-year-old that was just turning 4, like 1 month after starting, to about 10, 11.
Okay. So we would call that, like here, it would be elementary school is kind of what it would be termed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Teaching high school students too, but I found my really strong interest for younger kids because of the excitement and the always energetic and happy to learn and stuff, which sometimes I bumped into teenagers which had a bit more like reluctancy to do stuff. And my wife is a teacher too.
Is a really nice way. That's a really nice way to say it.
I looked for a nice word to use.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think there are a lot of people that are in the middle of the whole COVID-19 crisis that are homeschooling and are realizing how difficult it is to deal with kids and homeschooling their kids. And probably, hopefully, the value placed on teachers will be much higher. I've seen so many tweets of people saying things like, I've realized that I could never be a teacher, or I'm doing a terrible job homeschooling my kids, or stuff like that. I saw a really funny tweet that someone put out, like a meme. It was like, there are a whole bunch of parents that are going to be finding out that the teacher isn't the problem.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
That's good.
Which I think is lovely. All right. So you're doing this 50-50. What's next?
Yeah. So we moved up for 6 months to a place called the Gold Coast, which is kind of near Brisbane, a bit north from Sydney.
Nice.
And we had a buffer. I had 6 months to try to become a web developer. And if I want to teach in Australia, which I ended up never doing, I would have needed to do a 6-month degree at university, an extra degree just to have like the Australian version of my paper.
Right.
And we moved in July 2013. And I was like with my wife, okay, we have just saved enough money that you can try until Christmas to be a web dev, pursue your thing and see how it goes. And the first 4 months, so till October, were really, really rough because moving to Australia, I lost my Swiss clients and I pretty much started from the ground up. And I had a few clients here and there, but it was hard for me to get noticed and also get consistent income to the point where I want to support our child and family and stuff.
And you had to learn Australian too. You had to learn a whole new language, right?
Exactly. But And this is, I think, where my first big break came is through the year before. I had discovered this platform called Theme Forest, which is a marketplace where you can pretty much buy pre-made templates for HTML or Drupal or WordPress or what have you, and then do what I referred before to this Chris Coyer thread on Twitter, what's called like site flipping, where you just buy a theme or tell your client to buy a theme that looks really professional, and then you change the images and text and stuff like this. So that's what I had been doing for the 50/50. That was pretty much my gig because I was still very new to web development, and I was like, I can use that crutch of a pre-made theme, and I'm pretty good with client communication, and I can understand what they want and then put it on the website like they want, and they're really, really happy with that. So there was a business model here for me.
And shocking to me, Simon, something that I've been finding lately is there's just so much money in these prefab themes. You know, Adam Watham's making millions, you know, him and Steve are making millions from this Tailwind UI. And then you've also got, I didn't even know this until recently, Tommy I'm probably going to butcher his last name, Vedic or whatever. The guy,
Gritsum,
the brother, he did Gritsum. So he has a WooCommerce theme that went from very small in 2013 to now it's $150,000 a month, he tweeted out, that he makes from a WooCommerce theme. Like, you got to be kidding me. And apparently that's kind of where the name Gridsome came from, is the theme is Flotsam or something, right?
Yep. It's going to go in different times, but I've met Tommy in the Gridsome Discord when this thing came, and I was all about Vue.js and all about Gatsby, and this thing was the mix of both. Yep. And only the other day when he shared this thing about Theme Forest, I was like, hold on a minute. In 2013, I was all over Theme Forest and I knew all the popular theme. Which one is it? And he said Flotsam. And I kid you not, I have done 3 client projects with this theme specifically, and it's a really good one actually.
Funny. So in a way, you helped fund
I just connected
right?
the dots. Yeah, that's really cool.
And then some other guy tweeted out about how he has got a bootstrap theme or something that he sells in their company. They make $1 million a year. I'm like, I had no idea that there was this kind of money in this UI theming stuff. Like, that's crazy. You know,
you're in the wrong business, Andrew.
I mean,
yeah, we gotta.
No, I'm in the wrong business.
I think I'm in the right. Sure. I'm definitely in the right business because there's 0 people that would buy my theme. Like, it's just not a thing. But I was surprised. And then
terrible themes.
Yeah. Well, then I thought about it a little bit more, and I was just like, all right, you know what? That makes sense, because there are a lot of back-end developers or just developers in general that they just want to stand something up that looks good, and they want those Legos, and they just want to stick them together, you know? Yep. And that's kind of how you got started in the whole thing, huh?
That's exactly how I got started. And because I was living in this Theme Forest ecosystem so much, always looking at the new things that could be a good fit for clients, I quickly realized, like you just said, there's a place called Weekly's Bestseller in Theme Forest. Mm-hmm. And so you see the price of the templates, it's like $39. And then you see 1,400 sales this week, and you're like, hang on a minute.
Yeah,
1,400 times $39 in 1 week? What?
Yep.
It's like ridiculously good amount of money if you want.
Yeah, but I think that's a lure, right? And I think this is the case in a lot of things where the top 1% makes all of the money. You know what I mean? It's almost like people that want to go to Hollywood to be a celebrity, because I've seen someone that is ridiculously successful, but it's only a very small percentage of the people that make it. And it seems the same with these themes. Like, the top 10 themes probably make like 90% of the money, you know?
And I want to say now is absolutely the case. Back in the days, in 2013, Theme Forest was much smaller, although very big already, enough to generate sales. And I mentioned my big break is I went from looking at this theme and uses them as a crutch to, hey, maybe I'm getting good enough with design and HTML and CSS that I can, maybe not a WordPress theme, but I can make a template. And I tried to do HTML template for Theme Forest, and I discovered the absolutely ruthless review process. If you know anyone who's a Theme Forest author, or if you've tried yourself, you upload the thing thinking, it's not that bad, and you get an email that says, this is nowhere near close to what it needs to be to compete in this marketplace. Go learn your craft and come back. And there's no feedback. It's just like, bang. And as everyone, if you go on the forums, you see all these people getting demoralized because it's like, I've put hours and hours and I thought it was really good. And even if it looks quite good to most people, it's not even close and it's not going to be accepted. And I've tried this process for 2-3 months to the point where eventually...
Did that hurt you, Simon?
Yes.
When you read that message, was that like a stab in the gut?
Yes, the first one was really stabby. And I thought, because I was still learning, I was like, I'm definitely not cut for this. But then I went on the forums and I saw these $1 million making people showing the exact exact same email they got, and it's
Mhm.
use this, print it, put it on the wall, and one day you look at it. And I didn't print it, but I kept it in my mind. And eventually, after 3 months of fixing a thing and updating, one day the email said, your template has been approved. And I clicked on my profile and it was there, and it had already 7 sales in the morning.
Here's
and I was
the
like,
question. This is a really important question.
Yes.
Were they right in their initial email that it was not ready? Like, can you look back at it retroactively and be like, you know what, it hurt me at the time, but they were right.
they were absolutely right. Yeah, 100%.
What was
But
it? What do you think it was? Was it that it didn't have almost like the site builder type thing that a lot of people look for these days, or what were the customizations and options they expect to see?
So back then it was my templates. The first one was literally just HTML and CSS with Bootstrap. So there wasn't any build tool, Gulp or Webpack or what have you. Not even minification tool, because people use that template to then apply their own processing on it. So it was mostly design. Like the design standards are extremely high. That's why if you go on ThemeForest, it looks really, really sharp. So stuff like vertical rhythm and typography and spacing, but also the code quality and like organizing the CSS and having comments and a table of content and stuff that kind of you don't need for your own project. But if you sell something and someone buys it and it's like, okay, what's this CSS? It's nice to have like nice table of content at the start with little comments on each section. But this feedback wasn't specifically mentioned. That was like just a one-liner. That's not good. Go away. And then you have to figure it out.
See, that's unfortunate. I mean, but it is good that you can look back and you can be like, well, you know what? They were actually right, because I'm a little bit like, obviously no one likes to hear this isn't good enough or anything other than praise. Like, no one likes it. I don't like it, but I'm kind of used to it, because being a photography major, every 2 weeks we had to put our work up on the wall, and the teacher and other students would like tear it apart, you know? And at some point you just kind of have to get over it and be like, well, you know, this sucks, but I am learning from it. And I think that everyone likes to hear, you know, good job and that type of thing. And I think it's important to be supportive, but also I don't think I've ever really gotten better from someone saying good job, but I have gotten better when people have given me specific, useful criticism. And it's unfortunate that the criticism you got was so general. It wasn't really specific.
Yeah. So the background is that there's so many applications that they just can't give very specific feedback to everyone. And it's like, hey, it's a marketplace. You can find the information in the forums or on the web. Go figure it out and then keep trying. We're not going to handhold you, it's fair enough, because there's a lot of application.
And what do they owe you? You know, do they owe you a detailed explanation? I mean, probably not. It would be like if you went to a company to apply for a job, they may or may not give you a detailed explanation of why they wouldn't hire you.
Yep. They provide an incredibly huge platform, and they take 30% of the sales and you make 70%. I think that's when you reach a certain amount of sale. It starts at 50-50. But anyway, that's what they provide. And they're like, you don't like it, you don't have to sell it. We have enough templates. And that's
no, it makes sense. Yeah.
But,
so where'd you go from here?
I got 7 sales, and then that was October, and I was like, 7 sales, and my HTML templates are cheaper. It was like $12, so that was like maybe just under $100. But I was like, I went to sleep and I woke up and I made $100, which is cool. But the next thing, which is even cooler, is the next day someone say, hey, I love this template, I bought it, and would you be interested in doing consulting work to actually implement it, since you know it better than anyone?
Nice.
And I was like, this person was from Canada, and I was like, I'm in Australia, and I just landed a new client, which is already convinced that I'm the right person. So I don't have to pitch and do like portfolio, like just the whole dance to try to get them to trust me. They came to me. And this is when I was like, wow, this is how I reach people. I don't just go put Facebook ads or go put flyers in the city or whatever I can try. I just do good work and put it there. And this platform sells a bit, but also brings a massive sort of street credibility to me. And so
that's right. You get notoriety from it, and they're kind of doing the audition process for you. Yeah.
And what happened next is, now that I saw Tommy's tweet with the success he had, I kind of wish I doubled down, because my second template...
That could have been me! That could have been me!
My second template landed on the weekly's most popular sales stuff. And for this week, it sold about 40, 50 times every day. It was like crazy. I just made a couple of $1,000s in the week.
Wow.
And in my head, I was like, oh my God, I found my way, my niche. I'm going to make a third one. And I put all my focus on the third one, which by the time when it was ready, the other one had dropped out of the weekly most popular and stopped selling that crazy. And in retrospect, I should have, while you have the attention of people and you're there, you just keep adding little features and updates and do the best customer service you can to stay in that weekly top seller. And I understood
100%.
later that the theme forest game is all about getting to that page. And then when you're there, you do everything. If you need to hire people to just produce more stuff quickly. And this is what Tommy did. He's got a team, all the theme forest top authors, they hire people for support and they just build a business around this presence that they never want to leave.
Yeah, it's all about being at the top. And I've seen that mistake made, and I've made that mistake in the past, but I've seen lots of other people make that mistake with products of all different kinds. You know, they'll develop a whole bunch of different products. One of them will take, and instead of focusing on that product and doubling down on that, they'll be like, oh, I'm now a genius at creating products. I'm just going to create another one. And then the next one goes down like a fart in church. You know what I mean?
That's what happened. Yeah, I thought $2,000 in 1 week. So if I do 4 templates, it's like $8,000 in a week, and I'm sweet. And that's the wrong approach. I just thought quantity would bring this. Yeah, nice lesson.
No, I
learned,
get it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a tempting thing, right? It really is tempting, and part of it is just you're just like, well, now I know how to build product, so I'll just build another one. Yeah. And part of it, you have to be willing to relinquish your ego and be like, you know, part of it was just really good timing. I'm going to keep riding this wave. You know?
Yeah, but this was the pivotal moment because this client in Canada was not just a fluke. It kept happening, and I started having global people reaching out to make some work. And I thought I actually did freelance for a couple of years, and I was doing pretty well. And it never crossed my mind to get into corporate or like a proper job with a contract and holiday leave and all that stuff. But
well, who needs a proper job, Simon? You're like, I'm making thousands. I'm a genius, right?
Yeah, but I somehow still got lulled into that thing, which ended up being great. But you had Matt Barron on the podcast a couple of episodes ago, which we successfully pushed out of the industry now, obviously.
That's all on you. I had nothing to do with that.
Yeah. But Matt was design director at a company called Society One, which had an offshore team that built their website. And he was like, we need an in-house front-end dev that's really good with design. And his company was like, let's put ads on Seek and LinkedIn and all this stuff. And he was like, no, I want to find someone who's no one that's really, really good is necessarily going to apply for jobs there. Like, we got to go find them. And he thought, hey, I'm going to look at this Team Forest stuff. And he saw my profile and saw that I lived in Sydney in a suburb right next to his, and he legit say, hey, do you want to grab scrambled eggs, have breakfast? I love your work and I have an interesting thing to discuss. And we pretty much immediately clicked and became really good friends. And I ended up becoming the front-end lead at Society One and worked really, really close to Matt. I started as a contractor since I was a freelancer, and I eventually got sucked into the whole holiday and leave and stuff and got a full-time contract. But this lasted for a couple of years and I worked really close to Matt. So I learned design, and this is the part that we talked at the start where we moved the site to Craft CMS, and I started hanging out in the Craft Slack. And every single time I asked a question, the same guy called Carl Watts back then would be like, yeah, this is how you do it, and give me tips and consistently help. Yeah, like just
how annoying.
Taking over the whole thing.
That CalWatt guy never slept, so it matched up with your time zones, or at least when the internet works in your time zone. That's perfect.
Yeah, during the working internet time zone.
So that was the most incredible thing, is that I knew he lived in New York State, and he would be up in Australia's afternoon, like late work when you're 5-6 p.m. in Australia, and he's still up there, and it's like, hang on, it's probably 4-5 in the morning where you live. Do you sleep?
On occasion, I sleep. But where in this timeline, we gotta talk about it, Simon. Where in this timeline did you create the React training videos that you put on YouTube?
I think that happened just after, but it's So that's a good point. This job, and I think Andrew can concur, they didn't really know how much efficiency Matt and I, because we worked really close, design and dev together, and we both kind of coded and designed, and we were incredibly productive and really fast. And that was a slow-moving corporation, so there was a lot lot of time where we weren't really utilized properly. And I myself spent a lot of time teaching myself other stuff like React and Vue and design and all this sort of stuff. And I ended up, out of motivation, creating a YouTube channel where I thought, hey, I'm still completely beginner, but I may as well. I've learned everything from the community and from forums and from YouTube videos. I'm self-taught, and I feel like it's time to somewhat give back to the community. And I created this YouTube channel thinking, no one's going to watch it. Like if 1 or 10 people watch a video, it's awesome. And very quickly, I had like 1,000 subscribers saying, oh my God, this is the best React training on YouTube. Like, how do you have not more followers and stuff? I had like, I didn't really understand that I was actually putting a lot of effort in editing, which turns out to be the thing. People on YouTube tend to hit record and do like a 45-minute video. And my trip was like dev tips in 90 seconds. So I had Jade and Pug template series and then React series. And every video was 1:30 max, which I extended to 3 minutes later. But that was really, really short. And I think it resonated pretty well, which if you know anything about egghead.io, I didn't know at the time, but I had the exact format that they promote, which is straight to the point. The introduction is in the title and in the page context. You don't need to say, hey, my name is Simon, and blah. They already know that. And they want to know what the title of the video says and go straight to the point. And because I had that format, somehow someone at Egghead say, hey, would you like to become an Egghead instructor and teach your stuff there? Which Egghead is something that seems completely out of reach to me because it's only library developer, like really, really famous, accomplished devs. And then here I am in the middle of them. And
all right. It's time for real talk though, Simon. So I knew you for a couple of years before I even knew that these React videos were a thing. I had no idea you can create it. And I stumbled upon them. And I'm like, what the hell? Simon doesn't know React. Like what the what is he doing producing these videos? And I'm not doing it. I'm not saying this to like dunk on you at all, because I know that you're a super experienced React developer now. But let's be honest, when you were producing these videos, you didn't really know React, right?
I mean, you had proof because I was telling you, hey, I'm learning that new thing, React. It's really cool. And then literally a couple of weeks or a month later, I had these lessons on the internet, which proved I had that much experience that I had just started. But I think this is a really good discussion to have because I personally think that you don't need to be an absolute expert at something, especially if you teach beginner level stuff. All my series are always beginner introduction to something. And I think I've spent enough time learning how to teach at university and all these elements of
that's right.
Bringing someone the interest and excitement to learn something is another skill than the actual. If you watch my React series, there's no thing about performance and re-render cycles. It's the basics, and I think I teach it really well. And you don't have to be an expert for that.
But you raise a really good point, though. A really, really good point, which is that being able to teach and being able to communicate is a totally different skill and is something that is needed in any kind of a training video, right? Like I could name you a number of developers that know React super well, but they would make terrible training videos. You know what I mean? So I think it's definitely true that you kind of need that. And the other thing is, if you're trying to teach beginner stuff, there are certain things that if you're not also there, it's actually difficult to do. Like I even find this sometimes it's difficult to teach certain concepts because you just, I don't even know what it means to be a beginner at this stuff anymore.
There's
and you
too
don't
much
have that
separation.
context. You can't teach it. Yeah. But there is the other side of it though, which is that there are a decent number of people in the industry that are either giving talks or training videos. Not all. I mean, there's some that are incredibly well skilled, don't get me wrong, but that their skill is more in presenting and they would never get hired to do the thing that they're teaching. Do you know what I mean? Like they would get hired to teach the thing, but they wouldn't get hired to do the thing.
It's probably imposter syndrome kicking in, but I kind of feel like I'm one of these person where I'm very good at teaching and upskilling other people, but because I'm self-taught, I will always have that perception that I have missing elite skills or where I really, really master the thing.
You don't though. You've been doing like serious React development for a while. Like you know your shit.
I said it's imposter thing. I think it's because I'm self-taught that I'm like, there's no way I have all the little computer sciencey stuff, which I don't, but I don't think they're all necessary. And yeah, like you said, we've all seen a conference talk where someone is a bit awkward and just reads bullet points from the documentation. And you're like, okay, like certainly knows the topic really well, but I didn't really learn or feel like going and
Right.
playing with this technology just after the
That's
talk.
right. That's right. And that's a perfectly valid thing. The kind of person that you want presenting someone, they don't need to be an expert. They need to be a good communicator, and they need to be a good presenter, and they need to be someone that has enthusiasm and can teach your, keep your attention. But they don't need to be the person that you would hire to actually grind it out and do it.
I think the perfect testament to that is I now work at a consultancy called Thinkmill, which is very, very specifically focused on React and very good at React and embedded in the React ecosystem, like a lot of open source software that we built, some like Emotion, CSS in JS, or Keystone, which is a JavaScript, Node.js, CMS. We at the core, everything we do is by design within the React ecosystem. And it's by far the most talented team I've ever been in. And everyone is talented in React. And we have provided training workshop for advanced team in Atlassian, which is a very big company worldwide. And who's teaching these workshops? Jed Watson, the founder of Thinkmill, and myself, Simon.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, guys, I'm probably one of the least experienced in React at the scale of Thinkmill, but it feels like the whole company thinks I'm the perfect person to teach it, which goes to show that it's a different set of skills to get an audience engaged and interested and active, rather than being so good that you just forget where people are on the journey to learn, and it's harder to reach their problems.
Yeah, that's totally right. I mean, Marion, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on this, because I know that you've been in the industry a long time, and I'm sure you've seen your share of conferences. I mean, you must kind of, well, what's your opinion on this in terms of the skills that you need to teach versus the skills that you need to be the one that implements it and does the thing?
I think that's absolutely true, that being good at doing something doesn't necessarily mean that you're at all good at explaining it, even to other people who are also good at it. And being able to explain something to people who are not good at it, you have to be able to take into account the things that are still difficult when you're just learning something. And it takes a certain amount of humility, or at least there are people who want to show you how much they know about something by making sure that when they explain it to you, it goes all right over your head.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
They're
not
so proud
helpful.
of their cleverness. Yeah.
Well, they want to make sure that you know about their cleverness.
Yes, 100%.
And
I agree with that.
Yeah, so to be willing to explain things in a way that other people can understand is very valuable.
And I think it's an interesting intersection in that the type of person who is very good at programming and the type of person that is very good at presenting and teaching are usually very different people. And I think it's a rare human being that is a kind of a mixture of those two things. That is someone who is both good at communicating and teaching and also good at the nitty-gritty programming aspect of things. And Simon, I think you're one of those people. I really do. And I think that might be why Egghead saw value in you and Thinkmill sees value in you, is that you occupy this nexus position kind of in the middle between communicator, teacher, and developer. You know what I mean?
Thanks, man. That means a lot coming from you. It's funny because when I moved to web dev, I was like, I've spent 7 years at university learning how to teach, and now it's useless for my new job. When I was doing freelance work with small clients, the teaching part didn't really resonate unless I was teaching someone how to use like the admin panel or something like this. But it's only now later when I started full cycling back to teaching that was like, hang on, that's a skill that many developers didn't learn how to develop, and it's actually super useful for my career now. Yeah, I thought I was starting right from scratch again when I was like 25 years old, but actually I had a head start, which is really good.
And this is something that Matt has talked about with us quite a bit, Matt Stein, is that generalists are more prepared for things than people who are just specialists at one particular thing, because a lot of these little skills that you learn come into play in places where you might not expect. And development especially is something where you are constantly learning new things. If you know how to teach something, very often you also know how to learn it, right? And that must help you.
Yeah, and to actually be able to teach it, you need to learn a little deeper level than you think you would initially. And that sums up pretty much my mindset right now. I am not fluent in any of these things, but I can build a site in Gatsby and Next and Nuxt and Gridsome and Svelte and 11T recently I've played with. And if you've seen lately, I've released a course on Egghead on Alpine.js, and I literally discovered Alpine.js on the podcast here a couple of months ago, and I played with it, and I was like, this is really cool, and it's easy to pick up, and I think I can make good content out of it while I learn it. And teaching becomes the reason why to learn something, and then have a little product that you ship to the world, and a good excuse to learn a new technology. So that's a great way to stay up to scratch with the industry is going and make some sort of side income / again street credibility. Being on Egghead, when I dropped that in an interview, it's like, oh wow, that's pretty cool.
Well, everyone is just like, he must know what he's talking about because he's a teacher. Now, this is something that a lot of people may not realize, but Vrachliotis in Swiss, that actually means shiny object. Is that correct?
Totally correct, yeah.
Did you translate? So, and one of these shiny objects that I remember you kind of ranting about when I kind of was first getting to know you was utility first CSS, specifically Tachyons.
Yep.
And this is the kind of thing where you kind of went crazy with this and you refactored a whole site using Tachyons, and then you did an Egghead course on it. And then I told you, I'm like, Simon, just submit a damn application to talk at .all. And you're like, I'm doing a talk at .all, right? You doing all that? You're doing all this stuff with utility first CSS. We have someone on the podcast that thought utility first CSS was a bad thing. Patrick?
Well, I mean, part of it.
Would you like to explain yourself to Simon? Maybe get on your knees and beg forgiveness.
I mean, like you say, there was a time in my life when I couldn't tell if some technology was really exploding onto the scene and the new hotness and everyone needs to learn it, or if Simon was just excited about it because my Twitter timeline would just explode with tachyons here and there. And I'm like, all anyone is talking about is tachyons. And then next thing you know, I'm like, wait, retweeted by SimonSwiss, liked by SimonSwiss. I'm like, okay.
Oh,
it's just him.
It's just Simon.
It was really, I didn't know what was real anymore and what was popular, but I don't remember why I don't like tachyons. I continue to not like tachyons. It was too granular for me and too almost atomic. I really changed my mind about Tailwind as soon as we played with it even a little bit. I don't know what it was about Tailwind that felt so different for me from tachyons, but I think there's a reason that it's done so well, and tachyons is still a valuable piece of technology, and I think, got people towards Tailwind, but maybe didn't have the staying power. And I think part of that is Adam Wathan and the way that he can produce accompanying teaching stuff. And that goes back to what you're saying, Simon, about putting out content and promoting and, helping people become awesome at the technology that you're putting out into the world is pretty important. And you can't just make a great technology and expect it to do well without a lot of good backing. And that's certainly what Tailwind has had. And yes, I'm now a believer in the utility way of doing things.
I have this mental image, Simon, of you standing with one leg on top of Patrick's chest, thrusting a sword in victory up into the sky.
I must say I listened to the last episode on Stitch's CSS, and every time Patrick was talking about Tailwind in such praise, I remember the Slack discussions about. I knew every time I would bring Tachyons to Slack, I would get a heckle from Patrick.
It was just I had been gaslit into believing that Tachyons was taking over the world, but it was just you.
I made the impression.
No, but I think you make
Yeah.
I think you make a really good point, which is that, a lot of what is in Tailwind is very similar to Tachyons, and a lot of what's in Tachyons came from Bootstrap, and all these things have been around for a while. But what really matters is not the idea, it's the implementation. And I think Adam did a combination of nailing the implementation, because he did a really good job with the implementation in Tailwind, and the way for me, the thing I loved about it is that there's a config file that will generate the thing for you. Whereas at least at the time, Tachyons was like, well, here's your stuff. And I know that that's changed. But the other thing, in addition to nailing that implementation, is that Adam had built up an audience from a lot of the work that he'd done in Laravel and was able to parlay that and promote it. And, the combination of the two is why Tailwind, I think, kind of took off. It's not the idea. A lot of people think, and I've seen people tweet about this, the ideas are super important. No. What matters is how well you do at implementing the idea and how many people's problems it solves. What do you think, Simon?
I think that's completely right. One thing I love is the thing that gets people loving Tailwind, and they're like, oh, see, that's different than the Tachyons. And Andrew, you were one of them, is that it has the @apply thing that lets you compose utilities in your CSS. But if you talk to Adam Wathan or a lot of people that use Tailwind, it's actually almost that onboarding thing that you provide this for people that are skeptical, like, I'm not putting all my class names, visual concerns in my HTML, no way. I want a separation of concerns, traditional Zen Garden way. And you lull them into that, and then they're like, oh, actually, maybe I'll use this for a button or form element, but I don't think I want to reproduce all my CSS this way, because once you try the utility approach in your HTML and you just build stuff really fast, and when you look at the HTML, you actually see how it looks because your mind understands the class names. You can compose the styles in your head. You stop using that much. And I think it's an incredibly good example of how thoughtful Adam and Steve and Jonathan and people behind Tailwind were, bringing this onboarding experience, and in the documentation making clear, hey, you don't have to go all out. You can sometimes abstract components, but themselves, I don't think they use it that much, but it goes to show how much understanding the audience and where they come from, and empathy is the keyword in teaching all sort of stuff. I think the approach was different, and that's what led to this major uptake compared to Tachyons, which to the defense of the people in Tachyons, I don't think they were trying to ship something that everyone used. It was an experiment in terms of performance, and then they put it out there open source and somehow maintained it, but moved to the next thing, and it led to things like style system. And if you follow Brent Jackson, the sort of stuff they do, that's the people that kind of were in this sphere where Tailwind was approached as a product that's going to be marketed and supported.
That's right.
And,
and I saw Brent Jackson put out a tweet that was an apology for creating Tachyons. Like, I thought that was hilarious. He's like, yeah, sorry, here's a better, end way to do it or whatever. No, I think you're right. I remember Adam saying that when I was first approaching Tailwind and saying, yeah, you can use Apply, but you're probably going to find you don't use it that much. And I was like, yeah, whatever. You don't know what he's talking about. But he was totally right. Like, it ends up being that the Apply is kind of like the chloroform of the the utility CSS world, in that
carrot that you follow. And
it just lures you in. It's just the kind of thing you're just like, oh, okay.
Wait.
As long as I have this thing, I'm happy. But let's not talk about it, Mary.
No.
But I'm just going to say, if you're on your second or third Tailwind site and you're still using Apply, like, really you need to break that habit. It's not helping you. It's you've been lulled in by the chloroform, and it's you need to let go. You can do better without it.
I just want to say one thing though. Andrew casually dropped the fact that he said, hey, you should submit your talk, because for a year there was a lot of complexity and growing and decision making at Society 1, which made the BEM CSS become really, really, really hard to maintain. And I ended up rebuilding the whole thing in Tachyons. And if you've seen my talk at .all, this is what it was all about. So I'm not going to cover this now. But when Andrew said, hey, he literally said, this is the last day to submit your talk at .all. It closes today at 5 p.m. Just saying you should apply. Like, what are you going to lose? Just apply and then go back to work. And I was like...
I was like berating you. I kept on telling you to do it. And then I finally was like, this is the last day, Simon.
Yeah, and on that last day, I was like, you know what? He's right. Like, I had written a blog series on Medium on the refactoring, and it went really, really, really popular. And I was like, people want this content. And I was like, oh, I guess I'll apply for this talk. And I thought maybe in a couple of weeks, there's an answer. And the next morning, I had this email from Leah saying, hey, congratulations, you've been selected as a speaker in Berlin in 2018. And I was like, what?
Oh my God. And I was so annoyed, Patrick. I was so annoyed because I was very happy for Simon, but I had submitted 3 talks and heard nothing. I was like, what the hell? You gotta be kidding me.
Accent or looks, let's be honest here.
It's true. It's true. I mean,
your family, your entire family, Simon, like
he's a Calvin Klein underwear model.
Photographic people I've ever seen in my life. It's not cool. It's not fair. Including.
Do you want to comment on your career? You never actually. It's weird in this whole journey. You didn't touch on your time as a Calvin Klein underwear model. What's the deal?
This is how I funded the 6 months of web development freelance.
I don't want to talk about it. All right. So fair enough. So now we're at Society 1, and you ended up leaving there and then going to work somewhere else. And then you ended up coming back to work for Society 1. You're like a bad penny that wouldn't go away. And then you ended up doing something completely different at Thinkmill, right?
Yeah. So I believe everything is little milestones in your career where you get your luck. Some people call it luck, and some people call it, I made sure I was at the right place at the right time and things like this. So my first luck was this Team Forest template. And the second one, to be honest, is Andrew telling me to apply to .all and getting selected, because Craft .all is not the biggest conference in the world. There's huge conferences, but I have never seen many talks that get shared as much as the talk I did, because it's such a controversial topic. And I think I've put a lot of effort in really trying to take people, again, with this empathy on a journey from where they would come from if they haven't seen it, and then tell them I was right there with them. And I was like, this is stupid. I don't want to use this. And then my journey kind of showed the way that actually helps you mentally do the step. And I still now, like every week or so, I see someone sharing this talk and say, oh my God, this was the thing that converted me. And it has done the next good thing for my career in terms of credibility. So now I have Theme Forest, Egghead, and a talk that does the round on Twitter. And I think all the combination of these things, plus me doing a bit more public speaking in local meetups, led to this another person you had on the podcast, Dominic Wilkowski, which tapped my shoulder one day at a meetup and say, hey, would you like to come teach React at Thinkmill? And I was like, Thinkmill, when you live in Sydney, it's like the holy grail of React. If you're into React, the Thinkmill is everywhere behind every meetup event. All the big companies will hire Thinkmill because they're the experts in Australia, I'd say. And for them to come and tap my door and say, hey, do you want to come work with us? I was, again, imposter thing. I was like, I don't belong there, but I believe actually I do. And all these things that I've done to bring to the next milestone led to me joining Thinkmill, which is where I work up to this date.
So I want to talk about your speech a little bit. A lot of people may hear this and be like, oh, it was just kind of luck. Like he submitted it at the last minute and he just happened to get picked and he went out there and did this thing. But I think it's actually a really, really good example of the fact that things that look lucky, like you really have to prepare yourself for it, right? I think there's a famous quote, which is the reason most people don't recognize opportunity is that when they meet it, it usually is wearing overalls and looks like hard work. And I'm not even sure who that quote is from, but the point is that the reason your talk was so good is you spent a crap load of time working on it and practicing it, right? Like you didn't just get up there and just start speaking, right? You spent an incredible amount of time thinking about the story, crafting it, and practicing it.
And changing it again. I remember Matt Barron giving me some banter because 2 months before the conference, I was in our Slack. I was like, oh, I got it down to 50 minutes. I need to cut 2 or 3 topics and it's going to be perfectly 45 minutes. And he was like, it's 2 months before the conference and you already rehearsed the full 50-minute talk. And I was like, my strategy was actually to do it only once a day. And I think that's a good tip for anyone who wants to get in public speaking. No more than once a day and without speaker notes. And what it does is it makes you wing it, but wing it enough times that you eventually land on really nice transitions and a nice human, non-robotic story. So if you have speaker notes, you learn your speaker notes. And before you know, it turns into this monotone robotic delivery where my practice every day once would be a little bit different. And then I was like, oh, I like how I just transitioned, brought that next slide like this. And my brain would remember that for the next time. And if you do that, it takes time. But if you do that for 2-3 weeks before the talk, eventually you get to a point where the slides, I mean, I wanted my slide because they looked good, but if the slide went off, I could tell my story a cappella, pretty much the whole thing, and without having to try to remember the words, because it's just a story that you told so many times that it becomes just natural.
Right. And also the written word is different from the spoken word in terms of what comes off well. So the fact that you're practicing it without notes, you're kind of trying to do it conversationally, which is exactly what you want, right? You want to be able to get up there, and if your notes, were burned in a fire, like you'd be able to give the whole thing no problem. And it probably also helped from a confidence point of view, like you had it memorized back and front.
Yeah. So the confidence thing is huge. There's a factor that actually plays in my favor, but I'm extremely nervous when I do public speaking. Like even now for this podcast this morning, I was like, oh my God. But what it does is it brings adrenaline and energy. And maybe if I looked at my talk at Dodo, I paced the stage nonstop left, right, because of the nerves, and I shouldn't do this. But the rest, it brings a lot of energy in my delivery, which I think is why it connects with people rather than just looking at the slide and just being boring. But I'm extremely nervous. So I wanted to be really, really prepared. So worst case scenario, even if I'm in total panic mode inside, I can deliver the stuff like I'm natural. And I've seen so many people saying, you are so comfortable on stage. It's like you natural speaker. And I was like, dude, I was freaking out. Like I couldn't even see the front row. I know Andrew was at the front row and Jake Dome and a few friendly faces. And all I could see was a blur of panic. And I was like, I know they're here, but I was losing myself. And I haven't done it and I'm glad, but there's a couple of times, if I watch the talk again, one, I know exactly because I knew what was happening in my head. I thought for a split second, oh, I'm going to run off the stage and just go. Like I'm panicking. But the level of preparation and it just meant that I could deliver it in a really nice, natural way.
So Simon, has anyone approached you to give a talk on a topic that you have no experience with whatsoever?
Not a talk, but actually I've subscribed to combat that fear. We have this Seed CSS, which is a CSS meetup in Sydney, as the name tells. And the Christmas version was no preparation, just sign up and you get your topic 15 minutes before you go on stage. And I was like, I'm doing it, but this is the absolute worst for me because I hate no preparation. And I went through the blender. That was really tough.
Yeah. The reason I
did really well and everyone was like, oh my God, you're like so friendly. And I won the award of the best speech, but I think it's because I brought my kids and it was too cute and you couldn't like not give the trophy to my kid. So I kind of cheated, but inside again, my wife was like, you signed up for fun and you're freaking out. And I was like, yeah, it's tough.
No, the reason I mention it is, I mean, there are some, like we've seen quote unquote celebrity developers that have been asked to give speeches without knowing the topic at all and admitting that they don't know the topic at all and then just going up and presenting. And that aspect of the whole conference circuit irritates me. I mean, it's fine. You know, they may be very good presenters. They may be very good communicators, but you can find someone that is both a very good communicator and knows the subject matter really well. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to find someone who doesn't know anything at all about it. In any event, so you're at Thinkmill and now you went from just throwing dodgeballs at kids' heads and now you're doing React training now?
Yeah, and it was senior advanced level React training for Atlassian, which is in the React world is possibly after Facebook, the second or third biggest React application out there. It's huge. Jira is like an absolute beast.
And you're training them on it. Isn't that fun when you're like, all you people are so smart. How am I the one training you? That I hate that feeling. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad I had Jed. Jed Watson is quite accomplished in React. So when the hard questions, because when you do a senior workshop that is 2 day long, there is really hard at scale questions like what happens with this pattern when there's 6,000 nodes and I'm Jed. So I think that was a really good combo of me delivering the energetic delivery and fun and some warm up drills and then a bit more advanced stuff. And then the second day was deep dive and Jed was there to really answer the question. But also Jed was working with that teams and that code base where I was from Thinkmill and I was teaching Atlassian devs without seeing the Atlassian code bases as much as I should to be able to teach like specifics of their problem space. We try to teach React concepts and composition models and fundamentals rather than the specific problems that are bound to the business logic of a specific team.
Simon, I mean, you are exemplifying something that I have said for a very long time, which is that you are what you do. So if you find something that interests you and you just start applying yourself to it and you start doing it, like you become that thing, right? So you just kind of became a web developer because you were interested in it.
Absolutely.
You became a person of notoriety when it comes to utility CSS because you were interested in it and you did a whole refactoring in it. And then you started teaching other people about it and spreading the word about it. Same thing with Vue.js and with React. I mean, you became what you did. And I think that's why it's really important for people to seek out things that interest them and just start doing them. And I think you do a really good job with that because you're constantly looking for stuff that interests you and then you just start doing it.
Yeah. And to add to this, I think it's not given to everyone and some people like to keep private and it's fine, but I really, really recommend to do this thing. I think Swix on Twitter, Sean Wang, just promotes this work in public, learn in public thing. And he says sometimes like the quickest way to know, like if you're not sure, should I use this pattern or not? Don't ask, just say, hey, this is how I do it. And Twitter will tell you if this is the wrong way to do it.
Oh, yeah. That's the quickest way to learn anything is to give people the opportunity to tell you how wrong you are.
And I've never met Swix in person, but if you, the vibe I get from his career is he is similarly to me. He transitioned from a different industry, and because he's so open and public about things, he's going places like really rapidly. He built a really nice little career for himself.
Yeah, no, for sure. And he's a super nice guy, and he applies himself super hard. So I mean, of course, you're going to go places if this is the case. Yeah. So Mariam, before we wrap up, and I'll give Patrick a chance too. But did you have anything that you wanted to run by Simon or ask him? I know I've totally monopolized him.
That's okay. I think I need to listen to that .all conference again because I am still not there with the utility CSS. But
That's okay.
yeah. And also now I know how to prepare for a talk is practice it once a day, starting 2 months out.
Yeah, you have to start early, but it's a good way to practice
Yeah.
if you can afford.
I think that's the way to get good at anything is to practice it. That's what I tell my kids. I tell my kids, like, you can do anything if you practice it. You don't practice, you're not going to get good at it. That's what I tell them. You know, it's the way it is. What do you think, Patrick? Do you have any apologies you want to send Simon's way?
I apologize for nothing. I have no regrets. If I had jumped on Tachyons, that would have taken off and we wouldn't have Tailwind. So, there you go.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you're the reason why this took off?
Yeah, well, maybe a thought leader in the space. I may have attracted. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
No, I do think. No, I wanted to. I know. I hope Sam Hernandez, who I know loves the Stoics, is listening. I know. The quote you had. It goes even further back. Seneca says, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity."
Okay.
Nice.
That is kind of probably one of the first. The Stoic version of that, and people have kind of remixed that and made it more modern. But it goes back thousands of years. That idea that luck, you have to put in the work first, and then look for that opportunity.
100%.
One thing I'm wondering, Simon, where do you think are places where there could be opportunity for people who know a technology really well or have been doing craft for a while? Is YouTube still fertile ground for that sort of thing? What do you think people could, if they wanted to do like you've done, where would you point them towards?
There's a person I always point people towards, and most people will listen to one clip and hate that person. His name is Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, on all social media.
Very high
and
energy.
if you watch one thing, he comes off as the most douchey, cocky, motivational speaker asshole. Like, he knows it, and he actually rides that wave quite well. But essentially, he's a very, very accomplished business person, and he's all about kindness and empathy and accountability and stop making excuses. And his message is consistently put content out there. Just create content. Even if he actually helps people by saying document, don't create. So you're like, oh, I don't know what I can teach. Just document your journey. Say, hey, I'm a noob. I'm learning TypeScript. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to do a live stream or like some post and take you on the journey. And hopefully in 3 to 6 months, I'm actually pretty good. And if you follow that, you stop worrying about people judging you because you said, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. So you come clear there, and people actually would love to do this, so that when they see someone who puts themselves out there like this, they're like, oh, I'm going to follow that person because that's what I kind of feel like. And it's nice to, they kind of embrace this because you show the human side. So I wouldn't say YouTube is the best platform or LinkedIn. Literally go and try all sort of things. And the more content you put out there, the more likely one of them will strike. I'm myself, because of Gary V, I'm trying to do some TikTok web development content because it's a platform that goes up. And it's actually quite fun. And I don't know what's the way to then stream these people back to my Egghead or personal sites ways, but this shows that anything that you try can work. I would still say probably YouTube and writing blogs and Twitter really is the platform where web development starts.
And are you SimonSwiss on TikTok for the kids who have TikTok?
I am SimonSwiss on everything, but on TikTok there's another one, so I had to go underscore SimonSwiss.
Oh my God. How could there be more than one? For everyone who's listening, I think that Simon is probably running out of air in his car. He's been sealed up in this thing. I think the air is kind of cutting off there, and
there is a bunch of fog on the windows here.
We should probably a police officer is going to be tapping on the window soon. So I think we should wrap it up. But I think it's important to note that Gary V is also the guy that got Simon involved and kind of set off his career as a Calvin Klein underwear model. So it's kind of a little bit of a connection there. So Simon, we are doing something that in the entire history of doing this show of devMode.fm I have never done before, which is we're going back and we're adding something after the fact, after we've recorded it, because speaking of this whole hero's journey kind of thing that you've been on, something kind of cool happened to you. Why don't you tell everybody?
Yeah, something pretty cool happened. And it's quite funny because it happened in the exact same car at the exact same time, 5 a.m, next to the same exact antenna. And
whoa, hold on. I'm a little worried. Were any, prostitutes involved? Was any police? Like, I'm a little worried something happened. What happened in this car?
All very, very legal and nice. What happened is when Patrick said that quote about Seneca, I think luck is when preparation meets opportunity is pretty much exactly what happened. And I had a discussion with the folks at Tailwind UI about a potential position for me, which I think I've been preparing for all these years. And when the opportunity came, the discussion started. And it's not official yet, but by the time the podcast comes out, it will be. I have been offered a position as the second employee at Tailwind UI, which is pretty exciting.
So this is Adam Watham and Steve Shoger, and the basically the folks behind Tailwind CSS, who then created this Tailwind UI thing, and then they're making money hands over fist, and now they've invited you to be employee number what?
2.
Number 2.
Which is pretty cool.
My God. Oh my God. That's amazing. And you're just sitting there like, you know what? I've been preparing for this my entire life.
It's kind of how it feels. Like it's the first reaction. I mean, it was a fairly long discussion, but the first reaction was like, it's not even true. That's a dream. What's happening? But then thinking about it, I've been putting the effort and the work and the passion into it. It's pretty obvious. I'm very, very into utility first CSS and Tailwind, and it didn't happen by accident, I'd say.
Right. I mean, that's amazing. That is really cool because I remember I was there when you were going crazy with this utility thing, and it was a different product that we won't speak about. I know that Adam doesn't like the T word, so we're not going to go there. But I was there when you were going crazy, like doing all this stuff. And now to see and it's actually even crazy that Tailwind then ended up becoming as popular as it is, and Tailwind UI ended up becoming so popular that he even could form a company to add you on, right? I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And I think Adam and Steve are very excited about the fact that they can actually now have some budget to pay people and maintain it and do it full time to just make the product better and better.
Wow, that's really cool. So what is your role going to be as employee number 2 at Tailwind UI?
So I haven't started yet, as I said, and we're still defining all this, but
No, we're in the future. Okay. So we're a couple weeks. So you've already started. So what are you doing?
So I guess the sort of work I would be doing would be around community, some education material, videos, some examples, probably build a bunch of Tailwind UI new components and blocks, and also help with the other side of the community, which is open source, GitHub issues, the Discord channel, stuff like that.
That's really cool. So kind of a DevRel, but you're also going to be building stuff, right? So you're going to be building stuff in various frameworks like these component blocks and that type of thing?
Yeah. So, well, the role is product and community engineer. So it's really the two facets, which I think is my unique skill set. I'm a developer, but I also have people skills and community skills, and bringing all together.
That's what we were talking about in the interview.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what we're...
The role really wraps around this whole unique skill set, which I think is really exciting and amazing for me.
I mean, it sounds like they made the job for you, basically. That's crazy.
It's, it kind of is what happened because we discussed about potential fits and how I could help. And eventually what happened is a role description got designed around this whole discussion, which is awesome.
Well, that's amazing because you were already working at a job that you loved. I know you love working at Thinkmill, and you love a lot of the people that work there. So this must have been such an amazing opportunity to pull you away from that, right?
Yep. And I was literally having discussions within Thinkmill a couple of weeks before all that happened. And I was like, I never had any intention of leaving or even looking for another job because Thinkmill is such an amazing place with amazing folks. And then in retrospect, I said I didn't think any job could take me away from Thinkmill, but this Tailwind UI job is definitely the one.
Wow, that is really cool. Well, Simon, thank you for coming on again. I just wanted to make sure that we added this little update in here because I really do think it completes the journey in terms of the things that you've done, right? I mean, so everything that you've done and all the different frameworks that you've played around with and everything you've done with, I mean, it makes you perfectly ready for this role. And it's amazing that the role happens to be around. It's a crazy nexus. It really is.
Yeah. I think it completes the story pretty well. And as it happened, I was thinking back of the podcast we did a couple of weeks ago, like the first recording, and I was like, this is like the fruit, the follow-up of I was talking about these milestones when I went on Theme Forest and Thinkmill, and it seems like the next unlock, the next chapter. So it's really nice to add this to the discussion, I guess.
That's really cool. Well, thank you again for coming on, Simon. But that about wraps it up for another episode of devMode.fm. If you'd like to have every episode delivered to your favorite player, you can subscribe via RSS or find us on iTunes or Google Play. And if you like what we're doing, please review the show on iTunes. It's the best way to help others find the show. Patrick said he was going to make this shorter, but he didn't. You can follow us on Twitter at devModeFM, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Leave us a comment on the devmode.fm website where we can continue the conversation. For the devmode.fm podcast, I'm Andrew Welch.
I'm Marian Noliphant.
And I'm Patrick Harrington.
And thank you for coming on, Simon Vrachliotis.
Thanks for having me. That was really fun, guys.
the reason why I kind of tease Simon about Simon STD is because to me his last name sounds like an STD, but that's just my own failing at being unable to pronounce it.
I was
Nice
wondering
humor,
what
Andrew.
that was. Yeah.
Sorry about the chloroform, Marion.
It's okay.
She's like, it's our rating is gone again.
I know. My reputation is so valuable to me.